Hello, Martha Alderson again, the Plot Whisperer, and today we are beginning the actual second series, the book club for Plot. And so if you don't understand what we're doing, look at the video right before this one and it sort of gives you an outline of what we're hoping to accomplish in this series. So the book I had asked you to read is Major Pettegrew's Last Stand. It's by Helen Simonson. It's a novel. It's her first novel. I think. I should have researched that further, but I think it's her first novel. And it actually was a New York Times bestseller. So for a first-time novelist to be able to get to that place of, number one, getting a coveted New York Times book review, which is like impossible to get, especially if you're a first-time novelist, and then to actually have a ranking on the New York Times bestseller list is just a wonderful thing. So I thought, because it's a commercial novel, it has a very broad appeal to lots of different kinds of readers, men and women both. The protagonist is actually a male, although the book is written by a female. But I thought if you could see what this author did her first time around, and that made the book as compelling as it is. I mean, her story and the emotion and the character development is just fantastic. But there are lots of hints that you can get from this, glean from this, and that you can then try to inject into your own piece to be able to sort of help your odds in getting attention and being able to have a first novel that comes out that's compelling and very attractive to the reader. So I had asked in the last step, or in the last video, for you to read as much of this as you can, but what I really wanted you to do was to go through and see if you could determine where the beginning ends and the middle begins, where the middle ends and where the end begins, because it's pretty clear cut and it hits the markers perfectly in this book. I don't know if she counted her pages to get it to be so perfect. I kind of doubt it. But even the classics that I've analyzed over the years, that that no author would have counted their pages or their scenes, it's this universal story, and it breaks out pretty much the same in every great book, because rhythmatically and energetically the piece ebbs and flows the way that readers come to expect it to, and there's something very comforting about that on the deeper level of the story itself. So if you want to follow along on the old YouTube series, How Do I Plot a Novel, Memoir, and Screenplay on YouTube, this really is step 9 that we're going over now, is sort of the universal story and the energy of the pattern. And when you get my new book, when it comes out, which will be mid-October, The Plot Whisperer, Secrets of Story Structure any writer can master, it will be the entire second chapter is devoted to sort of this part of crafting a novel, and it's got lots of examples. So this book is 400 pages total, which makes it really easy to do the math, because there is a bit of math that's required, which can be daunting to pure right-brained, creative, big picture type authors. Math is not necessarily their strong suit. So what you want to do is to divide 4 into that number, and that will give you the beginning, up to the end of the beginning, the middle of the middle, and then the beginning of the end. And so for this, the beginning goes to page 100. It's from page 1 to page 100. And what happens at the end of the beginning is when the 2 guns, these 2 old guns that were gifted to the protagonist's father, I think it was, are finally reunited. His brother has died, who had one of the guns, and this is the older sibling who's still alive, who's the protagonist, the major. He has the case that has room for both guns, but one gun has been missing all these years. Now they've been reunited. That's a big moment thematically in this book. The guns represent the status quo. for this man's life. And in order for him to seize what he most wants in life, he's going to have to overcome the status quo. And so it's a very fitting place for the beginning to end. And the whole beginning section will go over what makes it the beginning, what elements are important in the beginning, so you'll know that on another session. The middle it ends on page 300. So that's 3/4 of the way through the book is around where the crisis hits. This is perfect. It's rhythmatically what the reader expects is coming to want to happen. The energy is building, building, building. There has to be a moment where the energy sort of explodes, then the energy drops off and rises again to the climax. And on page 292, which is just about page 300, the end begins, and it's the moment when the protagonist, the major, takes the first steps toward his final climax, which means he takes the steps he needs to be able to seize that which he most wants in life. Things that he couldn't have done anywhere else in the story, because the whole middle has to show the status quo for what it really is, and all the antagonists have to come up against him, and he has to gain the power and the wisdom and reclaim certain parts of himself in order to do what he needs to do at the climax. So what I'd like you to do for an exercise is to take a book that you admire, a book that's similar to the book that you're writing, that hopefully is a prize winner or has, done really well in the rankings or just really is a beloved book. And I want you to figure out the beginning, the middle, and the end. What I generally do when I read a new book is I divide by 4. I put Post-it notes at each one of those, each quarter, to be able to see energetically what's kind of happening in the story. And it's just a way for you to sort of get familiar with these markers in your own story. And then I want you to take your book, as much as you've written it, and I want you to see if you can sort of determine what the beginning, the middle, and the end is in your story. Because the beginning is very different than the middle. The middle is unique, and it's completely different than the beginning and the end has its own parameters. So if you're well aware of what those are, it's not that you have to worry about the whole project when you're writing. You just think about the area that you're working on at the time and try to hit those parameters and what's needed. So what we're going to do for the next week, next Monday, we're going to use the same book example, and we're going to talk about the 3 plot lines and how those are introduced at the beginning, how they're developed in the middle, and how they will come to closure at the end. So thank you for visiting, and if you need any more support, my blog is The Plot Whisperer. Like me on Facebook. I have a Plot Whisperer page, and feel free to visit the earlier YouTube series, How Do I Plot a Novel, Memoir, or Screenplay. Thank you.